In 1962, Jim Marshall walked into a music shop, bought a Fender Bassman from 1959, took it home, opened the chassis, studied every component, copied the circuit, and built the first Marshall amplifier. Pause on that. The Fender Bassman he copied, the original, is worth between $4,000 and $12,000 today. Now think about this. The old amplifier sitting in your garage, the one you use as a stand for boxes, the one collecting dust behind your Christmas decorations. It might have a story exactly like that. Not a guitar, not a pedal, an amplifier, a box you probably never thought twice about. Today, we are going to change that completely. 7 vintage American amplifiers and 1 British icon that are worth far more than almost anyone realizes. We will cover exactly how to identify each one, what makes them valuable, and why selling one without knowing what you have could be the most expensive mistake you ever make. Before we go further, if you have ever sold something old for $100 and found out later it was worth $3,000, you already know the feeling we are talking about. Subscribe right now. Every single week, we cover a new instrument, a new discovery, a new piece of history that families did not know they were sitting on. If you do not want to find out the hard way that you sold something worth $8,000 for $300, hit subscribe. It takes 2 seconds and it could save you thousands. Now, let us talk about why amplifiers specifically have become one of the most undervalued categories in the vintage instrument market. Everyone knows to look up old guitars. Almost nobody checks their amplifiers. Here's the core reason vintage amplifiers command serious money. The tube circuits built in the 1950s and 60s produce harmonic overtones that modern solid-state and even modern tube amplifiers simply cannot replicate. It is not nostalgia. It is physics. The specific transformers, the specific tubes, the specific capacitor tolerances of that era create a sound that recording engineers and professional musicians will pay enormous premiums to access. Add to that the CBS factor. In 1965, the CBS Corporation purchased Fender. The moment that happened, the entire collector market split into 2 distinct eras: pre-CBS, meaning before 1968, and post-CBS, meaning 1968 and later. A blackface Fender amplifier from 1966 can be worth 2 to 3 times as much as the identical model from 1969 with a silver face panel. Same circuit, different ownership era, completely different value. Number 1 on our list. The Fender Tweed Bassman, model 5F6A, produced from 1957 to 1960. This is not just a valuable amplifier. This is the amplifier that created an entire industry. When Jim Marshall studied this circuit in 1962 and built his first amplifier, he was not copying a product. He was copying the blueprint that would define rock music for the next 60 years. Every Marshall stack, every British invasion tone, every arena rock sound traces directly back to this single Fender design. How do you identify one? Look for the tweed covering, a woven beige fabric that looks almost like a brown herringbone textile. The front panel has 4 inputs. Look inside for 4 Jensen 10-inch speakers in a 2x2 configuration. The model number 5F6A should be stamped or printed on the chassis. Current market value, $4,000 to $12,000. If you have one of these, do not move it without making a phone call first. Number 2, the Fender Tweed Deluxe, model 5E3, produced from 1955 to 1960. Neil Young has used Tweed Deluxes almost exclusively on his studio recordings for decades. When producers and engineers talk about the deluxe tone, they are describing a specific compression, a specific harmonic breakup that happens when these small amplifiers are pushed. It is one of the most recorded guitar tones in history. To identify a genuine 5E3, check for the tweed fabric covering. Then look at the front panel. 2 inputs only, not 4. The original speaker is a Jensen 12-inch, either the P12R or the P12Q model. The Jensen logo and speaker code printed on the speaker cone will confirm originality. A matching numbers example with original speaker and original transformers sits at the top of this range. Market value, $3,000 to $8,000. Neil Young knows exactly what he is doing. Number 3. The Vox AC30, produced from 1960 to 1965 during the JMI era, made in England. We are including this because its story is inseparable from American music history, even if the amplifier itself was built across the Atlantic. The Beatles used AC30s. The Rolling Stones used AC30s. Brian May of Queen has used AC30s exclusively for over 50 years. The same basic amplifier, the same basic circuit. To identify a genuine JMI-era AC30, look for the Jennings Musical Industries label on the interior. The back panel or interior tag should read Made in England. Original speakers are Celestion Alnico units. The word Alnico refers to the magnet type, and it matters enormously to the tone and to the value. Later reissue versions use different speakers and different cabinet materials. Market value for a genuine JMI-era AC30 in good condition, $3,000 to $8,000. Number 4. The Fender Blackface Deluxe Reverb, produced from 1964 to 1967. This is where the CBS split becomes absolutely critical to understand. The term blackface refers to the color of the front control panel. It is black. When CBS took over Fender production in 1968, they changed the control panel to silver, creating what collectors call the Silverface era. The circuit changed, the components changed, the sound changed, the value changed dramatically. A 1966 Blackface Deluxe Reverb and a 1969 Silverface Deluxe Reverb look almost identical from 10 feet away. One is worth $1,500 to $4,000. The other is worth a fraction of that. How do you tell them apart? Look at the front panel color first. Black equals pre-CBS. Silver equals post-CBS. Then check the output transformer. The serial number stamped there will confirm the production year. Do not guess. Verify. If you are watching this and already thinking about a specific amplifier, good. Everything covered in this series exists in a complete identification guide I put together. Serial number charts, authentication photographs, exactly what to look for on each model panel by panel, speaker by speaker, transformer by transformer. It is available at launch price for a limited time. The link is in the description and pinned in the first comment. If you are serious about knowing what you have, that guide removes all the guesswork. Now back to the list. Number 5. The Marshall JTM45, produced from 1962 to 1966. These are the pre-plexi Marshalls, the originals. The name JTM stands for Jim and Terry Marshall. When Jim Marshall and his son Terry built the first amplifiers in their drum shop in Hanwell, London, they were using chassis and circuit designs directly derived from the Fender Bassman. The first 500 Marshall amplifiers ever produced were essentially hand-built Bassman-inspired circuits in a British cabinet. How do you identify a genuine JTM45? The front panel features copper and gold tones, not the silver plexi panel that came later. The JTM45 logo appears clearly on the front. The original power tubes are KT66 valves, a British tube type. A matching unmodified JTM45 from this era is extraordinarily rare. Market value, $5,000 to $20,000. These are museum pieces that still occasionally surface in estate sales and storage units. Number 6. The Supro S6420 Thunderbolt, produced from 1962 to 1968. Supro is the hidden gem of this entire list. Almost no one outside dedicated vintage amp collectors knows the name. But here is what you need to know. Jimmy Page used Supro amplifiers for the early Led Zeppelin recordings. Whole Lotta Love, Communication Breakdown. Those sounds came through a Supro. Page has confirmed this in multiple interviews. The Supro Thunderbolt is identifiable by its distinctive perloid covering, a white or brown sparkle material that looks almost like a plastic texture. The Supro logo appears on the grille cloth. It is a single-speaker design with a 15-inch driver. These amplifiers were sold through catalog retailers and department stores, which means they ended up in attics and basements across the country with owners who had no idea what they had. Market value: $800 to $2,500, worth every penny of a serious look. Number 7. The Magnatone Custom 280, produced from 1956 to 1963. Magnatone built something that no other amplifier manufacturer of the era achieved: a true pitch-shifting vibrato circuit. Every other amplifier marketed as having vibrato actually used tremolo, a volume modulation effect. Magnatone's circuit physically modulated the pitch using a varistor-based system. The result is a singing, warbling vibrato that is genuinely unlike anything else from the period. Buddy Holly used Magnatone. Eddie Cochran used Magnatone. To identify a custom 280, look for the Magnatone logo on the grille. The cabinet is covered in colored Tolex. Turquoise and coral were the most common factory colors. Two 12-inch speakers sit inside the cabinet. If you find one of these in a color other than standard black Tolex, it is almost certainly original. Market value: $1,500 to $4,000. Now let us bring this together and talk about what all 7 of these amplifiers share beyond raw dollar value. Every single one of them was built during a specific 15-year window, roughly 1955 to 1970, when American and British manufacturers were using components that no longer exist in commercial production. The Jensen speakers with original Alnico magnets, the Mullard and GE tubes, the carbon composition resistors, the paper and wax capacitors, the hand-wound transformers. You cannot buy new versions of these components that perform identically. The market understands this. Collectors and professional musicians understand this. The gap between what these amplifiers sound like and what modern production can achieve is not closing. It is widening, which means their value trajectory points in one direction only. The blackface versus silverface distinction deserves its own moment here, because it is the single most common identification mistake we see. A 1967 Fender Blackface Princeton and a 1969 Fender Silverface Princeton look almost identical in a photograph. They weigh the same. They have nearly identical control layouts. But the 1967 unit can be worth 2 to 3 times as much. The color of the control panel, black versus silver, is the first checkpoint. Then confirm with the output transformer serial number. Then look at the tube chart inside the rear panel, which Fender printed with date codes. A 2-minute inspection with these 3 checkpoints will tell you which era you are holding. Never assume. Never guess based on appearance alone. Here is something that surprises almost everyone who starts researching vintage amplifiers seriously. Condition standards for amplifiers are evaluated differently from guitars. A guitar with a replaced nut loses minimal value. An amplifier with replaced transformers, the output transformer especially, can lose 40 to 60% of its collector value immediately. The transformers are the heart of the vintage amp tone. Original Jensen or Celestian speakers matter enormously. Original tubes matter less because tubes wear out and replacement is expected. But the iron, the transformers, must be original for a top-tier valuation. When you find an old amplifier, before doing anything else, look at whether the transformers appear original or replaced. This single factor can be the difference between a $3,000 amplifier and an $8,000 amplifier. Let us talk about where these amplifiers actually surface. The most common discovery scenarios involve estate sales, where the amplifier belonged to a musician who passed away and the family has no idea what they have. Storage units are another major source. Pawn shops still occasionally have them, priced by someone who looked up the model name but found a reissue price instead of the original price. Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace remain active hunting grounds because sellers consistently undervalue amplifiers compared to guitars. The rule of thumb: if it has a tweed covering, if it has a blackface panel, if it has a vintage brand name, Fender, Vox, Marshall, Supro, Magnatone, do not sell it for less than a professional assessment. The cost of one consultation is nothing compared to the cost of selling a $12,000 amplifier for $300. The amplifier is not the guitar's accessory. Read that again slowly. The amplifier is not the guitar's accessory. It is a separate instrument with its own documented history, its own provenance, its own market, and its own trajectory of value. The 7 units we covered today, the Tweed Bassman, the Tweed Deluxe, the JMI Vox AC30, the Blackface Deluxe Reverb, the Marshall JTM45, the Supro Thunderbolt, and the Magnatone Custom 280, represent only the beginning of what the vintage amplifier market contains. Before you discard, before you sell cheap, before you let another decade pass with an old amp sitting in a corner, look up the model. Look up the year. Look up the value. 5 minutes of research could redefine what you thought you owned. Before you close this video, if you watch this far, you already have a specific amplifier in mind. You are thinking about one right now. The identification guide covers every model we have discussed across this entire channel, with visual checklists you can use at home without any prior technical knowledge. Photographs of original versus replaced components. Serial number ranges by year. Authentic covering materials versus later reproductions. It is everything in one place, structured so that someone with zero amp knowledge can make a confident identification in under 30 minutes. The launch price will not last. The link is in the description below and pinned in the first comment. Do not wait until after you have made a decision about that amplifier. Check first, every time.